Welcome to another episode of What's the Topic? I'm your host, as always, Matt, better known as Jasper Reviews. And with me today is not my co host, Luke, but instead someone just as equally as good, Dave Horrocks from the Comics in Motion podcast.
Hey there, Matt. Thanks for having me. Hopefully, I'm an able substitute. I'm not quite sure if on this podcast I'll be equal, but I'll do my best.
Good stuff. So today's episode, we're not really going to talk about One Division because I think we're going to try and talk about that in sort of 2-episode chunks. So we're going to just be focused on the news, and I think me and Dave are going to have a conversation about the latest film releases that have been delayed and whether we think they should just be put on streaming or if they should just go straight to cinemas. So yeah, that's show. So let's start with the first little bit of news. The rumor is currently Christopher Nolan, he's not going to be working with Warner Brothers again after, like all the Warner Brothers putting everything on HBO Max. Apparently he's so annoyed about it. That's it. He's not going to work with Warner Brothers again. I mean, I don't know where he'll go from here, really.
You know, I would love to be that rich where I could make a decision like that. There are not many Warner Brothers sized companies out there, and that you can just suddenly say, you know what, out of pure principle, I'm not going to work with you anymore just because you pissed me off. And, you've released it in a way that I didn't agree with. The fact that you're putting up all the money to produce this thing and distribute it and everything is by the by. I am so annoyed about that. So, that's his prerogative, I guess. He's had a decent career. It's it wouldn't be something that I do, but he's probably comfortable now, isn't he? And I don't know
Exactly.
Like say, how many others are there now? Because you either go to Disney, or Paramount, I guess. So
Yeah.
who knows?
Universal?
Universal's
Or are
another
they
one,
part of
yeah.
Paramount? Yeah. He's weird because, like, Christopher Nolan's one of those few directors working today who can just make anything and a studio will back him. Only one that really springs to mind that can do that is someone like Quentin Tarantino, someone who could just say, well, this time I'm going to make a Western.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. The studio go, okay, yeah, go for it. This, here's $100 million, go make it. And so like you say, like, he's obviously so rich, he can pick and choose. He's not going to be short of offers. I mean, it's big loss for Warner Brothers. I wonder if that will, bend their arm to reconsider their release, their streaming release schedule. I doubt it, to be honest. I imagine the wheels are in motion with that now.
But is it though? I mean, I know we know obviously the Nolan trilogy for Batman. We've got the likes of Inception. We've just had Tenet. I haven't looked recently how that did. Obviously, it's not going to have done as well. But there's a global pandemic on. I don't know why he would. Why you would think he would just walk to another studio and they're immediately going to back him. I don't think he's got that track record anymore. Like Dark Knight Rises was what, 2012?
True, but then let's have a little look at he's made Tenet, which has lost a lot of money. He made Dunkirk. I was about to say he made 1917. No, he made Dunkirk, which did very well. Interstellar was probably a bit more iffy. Then obviously during that period, then he made the Dark Knight trilogy with The Prestige and Inception in there. I think Tenet will hurt his brand. His overall so marketing, because I think people weren't particularly happy with that, and I think people are beginning to sort of see past his very confusing filmmaking style, and people are poking holes in that you can't understand anything being said. And so yeah, maybe it will. I think a studio would be happy to take him on for at least a film or two, but I could see he's the beginning of the end for sort of a Christopher Nolan-esque film. I do see what you're saying.
No, I mean, look, I hope we get to see him doing more stuff. I think part of me admires that he's taking that moral stance. Again, but I do think it's a little bit foolhardy. It's an exceptional time, isn't it, with the pandemic, and no one really knows what's happening with the cinemas. And I guess he was so tuned in to this being seen on the big screen. That's probably why it
Mm.
hurts him, more than, if it was another director with another vision.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe a big part of it for me, anyways, I see it as this is the beginning of what is going to happen to films in general. I think it was always going this way to, you know, things would be also simultaneously released on
Hmm.
streaming, but obviously the pandemic has sped that up. Yeah, I can fully see it in 2 3 years time that a film will be released in the cinema for 2 weeks and then it goes to streaming,
Hmm.
because I think like films like Invisible Man did so well from that. You generate that little word, that good word of mouth, that buzz, then you throw it on streaming for £5 10, and suddenly more people will watch it. So I think that's kind of, yeah, this is all speeding it up. And yeah, I think Nolan's obviously clinging on to he wants the cinemas. So fair enough to him. And yeah, he's rich enough to make the choice. So right, so well, next bit of news. You see, Spider-Man, Spider-Man 3, the third film, is going to be set at Christmas, or at least partially. It's going to be actually set at
Well, I didn't
Christmas. Do you
see
want to
that.
see a? Yeah, there's a few set photos. He's walking through a snowy New York. I think there's a photo of Zendaya as MJ dressed as like an elf working in a shop. So yeah, it looks like they're gonna at least partly set at Christmas. So do you want to see a Spider-Man Christmas film?
Um, it doesn't come high on my list, to be honest. I think, I mean, maybe we could debate for the next 30 years whether it's really a Christmas movie. If it's set at Christmas. So I don't know. I don't think, does it need that? I'm already slightly concerned. The last Spider-Man 3 didn't go so well. And
Yeah,
I
because it had too many
Well,
characters.
that was the narrative,
Yeah,
wasn't it? But since then, we've seen more movies with more characters, and they just do a better job of storytelling. So it could be that this is going to be too much thrown at it. We've seen all these different people, the likes of Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire being brought back. Charlie Cox.
mm,
I'm quite excited to see Daredevil in a Spider-Man movie. That is the one thing that's got my juices flowing. But whether it's set at Christmas or set at another time, I think I'm agnostic to that, to be honest. I mean,
yeah.
Shazam was set at Christmas, wasn't it? And it came out in February.
Mm. Iron Man 3 was set at
That's true.
Christmas.
Yeah. That's another one.
Yeah, I don't know when that came out. Yeah, well, that's Shane Black though. I think he doesn't he set all his films at
Yeah. So
Christmas.
I think
Because I think the Predator was set at Christmas, wasn't it?
the
I
Predator,
think it was.
was it?
Was it?
Not the first one.
No, maybe I'm making that up. No, as in the one he just made.
Oh, right.
The one
Okay. You know what? I have seen
I
that and
think it.
remember pretty much
Yeah.
nothing about it.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think I may be completely making it up, but it might
I
have been.
think I'm sure I read somewhere that he sets them at Christmas because if you're playing on emotional themes, it hits home harder if it's at Christmas. So I don't know if I buy that
Well,
or not.
why doesn't everyone do that? Why doesn't everyone
Exactly.
do that
Every
then?
movie,
Yeah,
certainly every
yeah.
emotional movie, you just set it at Christmas. So, yeah, I'm not sure I buy it. I mean, what about you? Do you care if it's at Christmas or not?
No, I don't care. But I think it's interesting enough. I think it gives a dynamic to Peter Parker. That him at Christmas instead of we've never seen sort of a Spider-Man going around sort of Christmas time New York and see what his life is like during that Christmas period. I mean, it to be fair, it's never something I've actually asked for, but I guess it's interesting enough. It's something we've never seen before, so why not? I mean, they're doing Spider-Verse, adding all these characters, and yeah, why not just try to do something a little bit different? I mean, I don't think it's going to affect the quality either way. I'm not going to look back on the film and go, well, if it wasn't set at Christmas,
Yeah.
it would have been a slam dunk.
Well, the first Spider-Man they had like a little Thanksgiving dinner, didn't they? So that was kind of set at Thanksgiving, and
Oh yes, of course
I
they
had
did.
to I
Yeah,
had to go back and watch it to remember that. To be honest, so
yeah.
maybe
I think it'll be probably be a very small part, but who knows?
yeah. No, but interesting. I think, you know, I almost want to put my head in the sand with Spider-Man 3 now. It's like I'm
Yeah.
almost getting too much information from the news that I kind of feel like I've already seen the movie, and it's not even finished shooting yet. So we'll
Mm,
see. We'll see.
yeah. So what about so there's another big bit of news was Karen Gillan has confirmed she's going to play Nebula in Thor: Love and Thunder. She's going to return for that film. It seems like I imagine most of the Guardians are going to return for Thor: Love and Thunder. But do you want to see? Yeah, do you want to see the Guardians in this film? And how big a role really do you want them in Thor: Love and Thunder?
Now I've kind of lost track. So Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was due to come out before, but they had that whole thing with James Gunn, and so Guardians of the
Mm,
Galaxy 3 will go ahead. The last time we saw Thor, he's with the Guardians, isn't he? So in canon,
yeah,
he's with them. Now, is
yeah.
Guardians 3 going to come out before Thor, God of Thunder, or is Thor, God of Thunder going to come out? Because I would have thought that would have dictated how much Guardians you will get in Thor, God of Thunder.
I think they confirmed Thor: Love and Thunder is set pretty much directly after Endgame.
Okay.
This is his like next story after Endgame. Because I thought, are they going to do it as a, like a 2 years on kind of thing? Then the Guardians was going to go back, so it would be like a prequel to Thor: Love and Thunder. But it seems like no. I imagine it's because then you've got to add the Guardians now if it's his story immediately
Mm-hmm.
after Endgame.
Yeah, yeah.
So I imagine it's kind of they'll go on an adventure. Then he's gonna essentially abandon them and go sort out Asgard.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so I think they confirmed Chris Pratt. He's going to be in it. He's going to be back. But yeah, it is weird for the timeline how they've done it. That because when I saw Endgame, I thought right, so that's the next film is going to be Guardians
Yeah.
3, and 4's going to be running about with them, and then 4 is the film that got announced, which seemed very very odd to me.
Yeah, like I say, I just wonder, because obviously Kevin Feige has this stuff planned out kind of years in advance, or at least architected out,
Mm,
not necessarily down to the script level. So I just think it was that sort of nonsense with James Gunn that's probably caused them to kind of reshuffle
definitely.
and rewrite there.
Yeah, I mean these things always go under sort of rewrites. I think yeah, he knows the overall story and kind of a path to get there, but I think that's always subject to change. I always maintain that the early Marvel films weren't building up to sort of Infinity Stones and Infinity Gauntlet to about Avengers, and I think like stuff like Loki's scepter was a happy coincidence where they could sort of put a stone within that, sort of, try and flesh out the universe. So I guess yeah, they've just adapted to what happened with James Gunn.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I'm interested to see them all. I mean, I imagine that's. I wonder if it's going to change what Guardians 3 was going to be.
I think it has to, doesn't it? Because
Mm,
whereas it was going to pick up after one story, now it's got to pick up after another. So I am interested where, Nebula goes, because obviously in Endgame you could see, uh, Nebula from the past, obviously in that timeline got killed off, and she was a bit nasty. She was still on her villain's path at that
mm,
time, but she's almost flipped, hasn't she? She's gone on to the hero's side. So is she going to become more of an anti-hero? Because she's never going to stop being she's going to kill if she needs to. She's going to get done whatever she needs to get done. But
mm.
is she going to revert to type, or is she going to continue to be kind of heroic there?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, yeah, she is that the complete definition of an anti-hero. Um, so yeah, I like the character of Nebula. I assume all the Guardians will return. So yeah, I'm happy to see them all. And I imagine they'll probably only really be in the first act, drop 4 off, and then go off about their adventures really.
Yeah. No,
Which
sounds
is a
good.
shame because Endgame was teasing that he was going to go off on an adventure with them, and now one film later that's actually not going to happen, which I think's a real shame.
I think I've got faith. I think they'll rewrite it in some way, so Thor,
Mm,
maybe, I don't know, maybe he'll be with them for one scene, and then say, "Oh, I forgot my keys" or something like that, and it's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
okay, you just got to go back." So they will close that plot hole, I think. Um, how long they give it
Mm.
with the Guardians, it is a shame because I did like, in Endgame where you've got that back and forth between Hemsworth and Chris Pratt.
Mm.
I love that bit. Where he's mimicking his voice, and all the Guardians are calling Star-Lord out. You know?
Yeah, I mean they all work really well together. So I think it's just shame we're not. Yeah, getting a film where it's as Guardians of the Galaxy instead. It's
Yeah,
just no, he was with them for a day and left.
yeah. But like I say, I've got faith. I think they'll do a good job. They've got enough credit in the bank for me to,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on. So, Snyder Cut. There's a bit of news on there. Obviously, it was said it was going to be, sorry, a 4-part series. It's now been confirmed. No, it's just going to be one long film now. It's going to be like a 4-hour film. So, would you rather a series or a film for this?
I might upset some of my good friends here, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm so done with this Snyder Cut. I will watch it whenever it comes out, whatever format, but I'm just kind of sick of it as well.
Yeah.
First, the story was this cut existed. It was right there. All Warner Brothers had to do was release it. And then it's what, 70, $80 million of reshoots? So that's what's required. And then you're getting all these other
Yes.
characters thrown in. So it's like, well, actually, the line before then was bullshit. Even I've got to
Mm,
point the finger at Jason Momoa. Even Jason Momoa's like, oh, well, I saw it. It's there. It exists.
mm.
So it's just lies, and deception, quite
Yeah.
honestly. And I can
Yeah.
imagine it would be difficult if you think about it. If you are doing an episodic structure, you kind of have to, close off that one chapter in some way before you and then start the next chapter. It's not just a case of having a break, having an interval, 4 times within a movie.
Mm.
So for me, it makes more sense either go with a 4-hour film or go with 4 1-hour shows. But I just, like I say, I'm pretty sick of the mixed messages about it, and
Yeah, so
like
am
I
I,
say, it
yeah.
just feels like deception to me. And the fact that, what was the hashtag that was coming out just before Christmas? I think someone from Warner Brothers had the audacity to call the story a cul-de-sac. And then what was it? It was something like, it was something Snyder, bring back the whole
Yeah,
Snyder
yeah.
vision kind of thing. And I was like, oh no, this is the next one.
I mean, it didn't work. For God's sake, it didn't work. Like the first two films are not good. Man of Steel's okay. Batman vs Superman is absolute rubbish. I mean, I'm just interested to see where he was going with it all. But it was rubbish. It was, that's the only way I can describe it. It wasn't very good. There are fans of these films, but there's not enough for it to be profitable, which I think people, confuse with. They were not making money and they were not doing critically well.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people who really like Man of Steel. And actually, Max convinced me a bit. We did a Comics on Trial with Batman versus Superman, so I was prosecuting
Yeah.
it. Max was defending it, and he raised some good points. And the 3-hour Ultimate Cut is better. To be fair, it makes more sense.
Mm.
But what I don't quite understand is why Snyder creates this almost cult-like following. It's almost like Donald Trump. It's like,
Yeah, it kind
it
of
is,
is. It
isn't it?
kind of
It's like, it
is.
doesn't matter
Yeah.
what he says. If you're on Team Trump, you will defend whatever the fuck he does. So even things
Mm.
that, if a random person, if a stranger did this, the same people who would chastise them on Twitter, and hang them out to
Mm.
dry, will defend the fact that Donald Trump has done that. And it feels that kind of same fanaticism with Zack Snyder. I went back and watched 300, and yeah, it's okay. And it's very faithful. I thought Watchmen was about as faithful an adaptation that you could get on the screen, but I don't necessarily think even Snyder got everything. I thought it looked good, but
Mm,
it's a lot of the time for me, it's just style over substance. And the fucking slow mo action scenes, I've seen it. I've seen it. I don't need to keep
yeah,
on seeing it.
yeah. It's yeah. He's mostly just a cinematographer. I mean, the parts of uh Batman vs Superman, it does visually looks fantastic. But like, yes, all the slow mo and we say like, oh, the 3 hour cut is much better, but it I'm sure it is, but like it doesn't need to be 3 hours. Like you spend 10 minutes showing the origin of Batman and stuff like that. But like we've seen all that stuff. It's just things that shouldn't be there, and the plot overall is so convoluted you can't keep up. Obviously, the Ultimate Cut explains that a little bit more, but like I'm interested in the Snyder Cut. I do just want to see it now, but I think what's going to happen is audiences and fans are going to say it's brilliant, and critics are going to destroy it because there must have been a reason Warner Brothers said like we've got to shut this down now when he was first making it. Have to get Joss Whedon in. I imagine obviously a lot had to do with uh, Batman vs Superman, how that did, and obviously that vision wasn't working. And I think people do need to accept that and try and cast their minds back to sort of 2016 that this film was getting caned by people. It would people would not like it.
Well, I think let's not forget as well, Zack Snyder went through something that no
Of
parent should
course,
have to go
yeah.
through, and my heart goes out to him for that. It's a horrible, horrible thing. Um, but yeah, so here's a question for you: is there a more toxic film than Justice League? From
How do you mean, like as in toxic fans
Not
around it?
necessarily just toxic fans, just everything about it. You've got the whole Ray Fisher thing at the moment. You got
Yeah,
Joss Whedon. Probably will he ever work again? Debatable. You know?
yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess it's I find it fascinating. It's a film that was released 3.5 years ago, is not very good, was did very poorly at the box office, and is still discussed a lot today. And yeah, it probably is the most toxic film. It's a type of film I hate because it it just doesn't isn't it isn't anything. Do you know what I mean? Like it isn't. It's so flat and just has nothing to say. It's visually just dull. It's just got no personality to it. At least Batman vs Superman and Man of Steel films that I'm not overly keen of, I don't particularly enjoy. They have some sort of personality and some sort of
Mhm.
look and feel to them. Justice League is just nothing. It's just blandness. There's no charisma about it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it probably is one of the most toxic films going.
Yeah, and it's just a mixed up tonal mess, isn't it, really? I mean,
Yeah,
I think that's why a lot of the fans, I'll empathize with them for a sec, are just let down because at least, the Justice League that Zack Snyder was building to at least had, the same kind of tone. And I guess they just want to see that. But I, I mean, it does seem ridiculous, doesn't it? That,
mm,
time moves forward. Create the next thing and make the next thing better. So it'd be like, oh, Thor Dark World, that was a bit crap, wasn't it? Well, there was all kinds of problems with it. Shouldn't we have a new cut of Thor Dark World because that's the
yeah,
weakest MCU movie? It's just no. Let's create the next movie, Thor Ragnarok, and make it much better.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the DCU have been trying to move away from all the Snyder stuff, but I think they just found a money making opportunity
Hmm.
to actually do the Snyder cut because obviously I'll probably pay for it because I'm a
Me
sucker.
too.
Um, yeah, no matter how much we're lambasting it, I'm like yeah, I'm pretty interested in this. I'll pay £10-15 and give it a
Well,
watch.
it's going to be an event, isn't it? And I think what
Yeah,
is going to be fascinating as well, like I say with the whole Trump analogy, I just think that there's going to be people who verbalize how wonderful this is. They don't even have to have seen it yet. They know they are going to love this and they're going to worship it. They're going to go on
Yeah,
to IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes and they're going to sing its praises. There are some people who will just love this no matter what is put out.
definitely. Oh yeah, definitely. I think people have already made up their minds about
Yeah.
it that it's
Yeah.
fantastic, but it won't be. Okay, last bit of news before we move on to the big topic. Just something I found a bit interesting was Kevin Feige has said that Phase 4 will not reference Thanos' snap much. So the snap is now called the blip.
Yep.
He said that the films will move away from that. They're not going to keep referencing. And he essentially said he kind of regretted that films after the Avengers referenced the New York battle. So it got called like the event, didn't it? In a lot of things like Netflix shows, he says no. I think it's time to like move on and create new stories. And he kind of regrets that. Yeah, that characters were always talking about. Yeah, like obviously that climactic scene. So I think it's quite interesting that sort of the biggest moment in the MCU is kind of not really going to be referenced much over this next phase.
That is interesting, isn't it? And I guess where where does his regret come from? I wonder, because it's the same problem now that the comics publishing companies have been dealing with for decades now. So it's that continuity, isn't it?
Yeah,
And unfortunately, the more complex and the more you keep hold of that continuity, the more complicated writing new stories is, because you've got to think, oh, right,
definitely. Yeah.
well, no, we're not going from a blank piece of paper because we need to think about, well, this couldn't happen. That whole 5-year gap, if you think about that, forget superheroes. Just the man on the street or the family, typical nuclear family, half of them were gone for 5 years. 5 years moves on. A lot can happen in that time.
Definitely. Yeah. Of course.
People have moved on. They've got new families. And the people who've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
dusted come back, and as far as they know, it was just a second ago. 5 years
Mm,
ago was a second
yeah.
ago. So if you think about the impact of that, it's huge, and the ramifications were in real life would ripple on for at least decades, if not even longer. It'd be one of those major events, that just gets passed down from generation to generation. So I think his regret is that, shit, we've made life quite complicated and we just want to make great films. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's kind of a necessity. I think you can't keep coming back to that and keep
Yeah, if you
referencing.
keep coming back to it, people are going to keep asking more and more questions, aren't they? People are going to be like, "Well, what about this this event? What if like you say, like a
Yeah,
family got restarted, and that a husband or a wife comes back, or what about this scenario if someone's like in a plane
yeah,
and then they snap back? Do they just then fall? It's like, well, let's just move on. Stop asking questions.
yeah,
Just everyone's back now. It's fine.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's kind of how comics mostly go when a huge event like that happens. Everything's back to normal, and it's time to move on. We're gonna just talk about other stories now.
Yeah, and even I'd need to watch Spider-Man Far From Home again, because that kind of was a bit strange, because you had pretty much the same high school cast, but some of them had been dusted, some of them hadn't. And I remember being a bit confused. I'm like, well, have they been around or not? But they all look the same
Mm,
age. And so, even that one, again, maybe that's part of his regret as well. That it just made that one a bit messy.
yeah, I think for me, I feel like Phase 4 is just like everything's. They did the Spider-Man Far From Home. So look, we'll explain give you an overall explanation of
Mhm.
everything, and then like that's kind of all you're getting, and then we're just going to move on. You think the first film is going to be Black Widow, which is a film that won't pick up after Phase 4. We've also got One Division and Falcon Winter Soldier, which is just picking up what they're up to. Not, I don't feel like a film that's going to explain much. So So yeah, we'll see. They'll definitely reference it, but it sounds like he won't be going into too much detail.
Yeah. No, I think that's
Yeah,
good. I just want these new movies. Gimme,
yeah,
gimme,
yeah,
gimme.
yeah. I just want the new films. So yeah, we're going to talk about this. We'll move on to the big topic now. Is so currently a lot of films are now getting another release date. So it's kind of like this sort of quarterly thing now that you get to this point and then all these films just have to be pushed back again, or they're going to go straight to streaming, which in Warner Brothers case they've already done. On this podcast, I've tried to stay away from basically talking about new release dates because it's happening all the time. But I thought it's interesting because a lot have been moved these last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it'd be interesting to go into kind of what films are you happy to wait for, and kind of what films you think actually they kind of suit streaming. So why not let's just get them on. So I've got a list of how many have I got? I've got 5. So or have I? No, I've got 6. I've got 6 even. So we'll go through these 6 and see what our thoughts are. So the first one I put on it, which has been moved back quite a long time, is Morbius. So that was originally going to be released in July 2020. It's now got a release date of January 2022.
I mean, that is a... So my challenge is, would I be happy with that on streaming, or would I want to see that on the big
Yeah,
screen?
so would you... yeah, because I mean, I feel so, at some point these production companies, they got to make a call. They got to make a decision to go, actually, we've got to just put this in streaming because these big films are burning a hole in production companies' pockets. They're big blockbusters. They've got to do something with them.
Yeah.
So I mean, something like Morbius is got made for a lot of money, and also I would say they need to release this first, then Venom, Let There Be Carnage, because that's obviously in their little cinematic universe. Things have got to go on that nice little line. So I mean, would you like to see? Do you want Morbius now, or are you happy to wait?
I guess so. I'm going to answer the question in 2 parts because I think so. What do I think these production companies should do? Well, if you think about your own pocket, your own incomes and outgoings, you couldn't just say, you've got to pay your gas, your electric, you're spending on food and all this sort of stuff. So you've already got your outgoings. If your employer turned around to you and said, look, times are a bit lean, we'll pay you, but, it'll be in 2 years' time. We're going to pay you for the work you're doing and everything. You're not going to be out of pocket. That's going to create you a massive cash flow problem because you've still got all
Exactly.
these outgoings. And even though these huge companies, it almost gets a bit lost, isn't it? The figures that they're talking about, and they know they're going to make money on some movies and not on others. But I just don't see how you can keep it on ice for that long and not get some of the money back that you've paid. So the only reason I can really think that they're going to push it back that far is that they think, if they release it to streaming, they're going to make potentially a loss on it.
Yeah.
And again,
Definitely.
if you think particularly about American executives and how they think, none of them are here for 10 years. They're all about the quarterly profits and everything. So if they thought that they could release it now and make a profit, I think they'd do it. Now, for me, I think Sony's record has been a bit patchy. The only real reason Spider-Man is back in the MCU is because of the horrible job they did with the Amazing Spider-Man, quite honestly. And even going back to Spider-Man 3, fair enough, Into the Spider-Verse was great. Venom was, I enjoyed Venom, but the reception was mixed, wasn't it? But I think they would see it as a financial success, so it's a success. I'm lukewarm towards Morbius, and I think it's, if I was to hazard a guess, I reckon it's going to be a middle of the road type film. So I don't actually think I need to see that one at the cinema. I think I'd be quite happy to watch that one on streaming.
Yeah, I think I'd be personally for Morbius. It's something I would I'll probably I would have probably gone seen it in the cinema, but I wouldn't have been overly keen. And I think for this to go streaming is probably better for Sony because I don't think a whole load of people would have seen it. I think because it's just such an unknown character,
Hmm.
putting it on streaming is probably the better thing for the character to get that name out there. But the only problem is it's very hard for these streaming companies to judge whether you're signing up because how do they know that I'm signing up? I'm signing up just to watch Morbius or something else. So it's very difficult to gauge the interest and whether sequels should be made. And I think that's what we're going to see with like the Warner Brothers slate is like say something like Godzilla vs Kong. Those won't get any sequels now because they just can't gauge whether people want more of that sort of content. But to be honest, I want to see some films be released, and to be honest, I would like to see Morbius just come to streaming because
Hmm.
I'm so indifferent to sort of seeing this film, and then also it gives a chance for the Venom sequel to then be released and not be delayed so much because I assume now the Venom sequel will have to be pushed back past this film,
Yeah,
so, which is something I don't want.
yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
But
okay, so no
what do
one.
you think?
I'll go on.
What do
Yep.
you think they're going to do with Morbius as well? Because if he was released in the MCU, and I don't particularly care about Morbius to be quite honest. Um, actually, there was an interesting story with a Marvel Zombies run, which is probably about the most I cared about the character at that time. But
Mm,
generally, I don't care about him. Now, if he was in the MCU and there was some kind of, convergence to Blade, say, then I'm
yeah.
in. But it's not. It's going to be completely separate. It's going to be like Venom, where you've got this character who is so tied to Spider-Man in the comics, but they make up this different kind of backstory for him, and he's not actually anything to do with Spider-Man, even though he looks like Black Suit Spider-Man. So,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a funny one, isn't it? If they've maybe agreed with Disney that there can be some sort of crossover, I think if there's a crossover, I'm more in than I currently am now, and I don't think there will be.
Well, I think that might be the reveal with Michael Keaton being in it, but yeah, that's the thing. I think like that's why putting it streaming is probably the best thing. Get it out there if this is what's going to happen with it.
Yeah.
Another film put on was A Quiet Place 2. So that was originally going to be released in March 2020. It's now going to be released, well, at the moment, September 2021. For this film, for me, I want to see it in the cinema. I think like a horror film like this deserves to be seen in the cinema. And the first film was so good that I'm happy to wait for the release of this film. To be honest, I don't want to see it on streaming because I don't think you get the full effect of the film.
So you're gonna have to help me out because I've not seen A Quiet Place. So what
Oh
type
no,
of movie is that? Apart from a horror
that,
movie, so what am I seeing?
it's a horror film directed by John Krasinski. He basically the Earth's been invaded by aliens, but these aliens can't see; they work off sound. But they've basically decimated the world, and it's a story of him traveling with his family, his wife and kids, and you have to be very very quiet, otherwise the aliens are gonna get you and kill you basically. I mean, it was a critical success. It was a financial success, and they've done the sequel with Cillian Murphy is now going to play the lead with
Right,
Emily
okay.
Blunt, and this was like about to be released. Like it was a week away from release date, and then they pulled it.
Mm. You know what I think as well? I think when it's put on ice, when a film's put on ice, you expect special effects and things to move forward, and
Mm,
you kind of have this almost subconscious expectation that they're still working on it, even though they're probably not.
yeah,
So, like when Wonder Woman 84 came out, some of the CGI in there, honestly, was horrible. And you're thinking, well, with all these delays, surely someone's looking at that and going, you know what, we could do a lot better there. I know it's going to be a bit of extra money, but come on, let's sort that out. And they clearly didn't.
Yeah,
New Mutants as
definitely.
well, to great pain to me because I love the source material, but the delays that had, and it ended up, they could have almost released it, 6 months after it was made, and it that was the movie we eventually got. So I don't know. I think if it's ready now, it should go now. Now I don't have a real kind of. I'm not a big horror guy. I think the last
Mm.
horror movie I watched in the cinema was Jeepers Creepers, which, the second half of it it did get a bit silly. But I just remember all the bloody jump scares at the start scaring the living shit out of me. And I just remember getting grumpy about it. And I'm like, fuck this shit. Why am I doing this to myself? I hate it. So that was the last one I saw. So for me, horror film, happier for it to be on streaming where I can hide behind my
Fair
cushion.
enough. So here's one that it looks like the big rumor is it's going to move to streaming is Black Widow. So Black Widow originally going to release in May 2020. It's been delayed a whole year to May 2021. But now, obviously, with the pandemic looking like it's not slowing down at the moment, apparently there's discussions about delaying it and even just putting it on Disney Plus streaming. So for me, I actually want this to go to streaming now. Before I didn't, but I don't want it delayed anymore because when you delay the Marvel films, when you delay a Marvel film, all the Marvel films get
Yeah.
delayed. Because obviously this got pushed back, everything got pushed back with it to the date of the film before it. So I think it was going to be released in November, which the Eternals was going to be released in, so that had to move to February. Then everything shifted. Everyone's got to shift one back. So if you keep delaying, everything's got to shift one back because these Marvel films are released very specifically. That they pick their dates and that is set because they know they'll dominate that time period. So for me, I'm happy to see this on Disney Plus. I want to see some more Marvel content. So for me, Black Widow should now get released to streaming.
Yeah, and I'll begrudgingly agree with you as well because
Yeah.
I've watched every single MCU movie that's been on the cinema. So, it doesn't matter how busy I am in my life. I've had kids in that time, and I'll always make time to go to the cinema to watch the latest MCU movie. But exactly how you've said, it means everything else gets pushed back. Well, no, 2020 was a wasteland, for new content. We went for
Yeah.
ages where Bloodshot was the most recent, new content that I'd seen. And that was a horrible place to be in. So, yeah, let's get it out there. Let's get it on streaming. I don't think, this is going to be more of a spy thriller, a bit of espionage, you would imagine. So I don't think it's going to be all about the special effects and, it's certainly not going to be cosmic. So I think this would be better on the small screen. It's just like I say, it's a bit sad for me that, an MCU film is a bit of an event and this time it won't be, but let's get it on streaming and, let's get all the other content on our screens as well.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I don't think Black Widow's going to be a key film for, the overall story of Marvel, because obviously it's a prequel of it. Was it set just after Winter Soldier? So you're going back 6 years and you're mostly just fleshing out a character. You're just, the character of Black Widow has such a huge fan base now that people just want to see more of that character. But this story isn't about, it's not going to link into the Eternals or Shang-Chi. At least I don't think it will. Maybe have a post-credit scene. So I think that's why also it suits streaming, because you can say, here you go, here's the character-driven story to explain more about your favorite character, and that's kind of it. Instead of it's not like Endgame is coming to streaming. It's a more, even though it does look very big and incredible, it's still quite a small scale story compared to other Marvel films.
See, I don't think it's just a throwaway story. I've no idea what they're actually going to do, but they've never done just every movie that's come out has been set in continuity. So even if you think about it, Captain America: First Avenger came out after Iron Man. The majority of that was set in the Second World War, but right at the end, he's back in the present day,
Yeah,
and that is after Iron Man. So every single film has been like that. Black Widow's currently dead, and I say currently dead. We know in comics
yeah.
no one stays dead. So I think it's going to explore her backstory, but I think she's going to come back into the current continuity because she's in the soul world, isn't she? So she's not
Yeah.
dead. And I think somehow she's going to come back. Maybe that'll be part of Thor. Maybe Guardians of the Galaxy. I think she'll end up being brought back, and I don't think it'll just be a throwaway film.
I think, yeah, someone like Scarlett Johansson, she's such a big star that they will look to ways to get her back. I mean, no one in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is ever dead. There's always a way to bring them back. They always, Loki's come back, Gamora's come
Mm-hmm.
back. Yeah, and these are characters that died in Infinity War. Vision, he's come back. So all the main characters that died in Infinity War have come back,
But
and then
Is
obviously,
Vision really back? I can't quite figure that out yet.
well, he's back in the sense that he's on our
Yeah,
screens, isn't he?
yeah,
He's
yeah.
there, he's knocking about. Uh, so yeah, I'm sure, and of sort of Zoe Saldana, Tom Hiddleston, Paul Bettany, and Scarlett Johansson. The biggest star is Scarlett Johansson,
Yeah.
so I think they will find a way to bring her back, and I'm more than happy to see her come back. But it does cheapen it a little bit. But that's kind of Marvel when characters dying. They've never really gone all the way with it ever, to be honest. So it's
No,
always been a bit of
Uncle Ben
a
is
shame.
probably the only one who'll stay dead.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, poor Uncle Ben is the only other character who has ever stayed dead. He's probably the only character in superhero history, in comics history, who has ever
Yeah,
stayed
Bucky
dead. And I feel
used to
really
be
sorry
another
for him.
one until he came back as the Winter Soldier. So
Yeah, I guess Jason Todd, he spent a little fair amount, 20 odd years dead.
yeah, and Barry Allen
Not
as
that
well. He
much.
he spent about 30 years dead. So yeah, they
Yeah,
bring them all back eventually.
yeah, eventually. Okay, here's one. Godzilla versus Kong. So I'm a huge fan of the monster films, and especially these ones. They've been released by, is it Paramount who releases them, or
I think
Universal
it's
do them, don't they?
Universal, isn't
Oh, I
it?
don't
I
know.
think it's
Yeah.
Universal.
Anyways, I do love these films, simply for the fact that I think they're old classic sort of popcorn films where you sit down and you just it doesn't matter what the plot is. It's just about monsters punching stuff, and that's fine. That's fine for me. Obviously, Warner Brothers said they're going to release it all to streaming, which had me really. I think this was the one that had me most upset,
Hmm.
and I thought, no, I want to see it in the cinema. It's going to be released March 2021 on HBO Max. So, I mean, is this a film you're happy to see straight to streaming, or would you have liked to have waited for it to hit cinemas?
To be honest, this is one that I probably wouldn't have watched on the cinema. But for
Mm.
fans of,
I think it falls into that category for a lot of people, in
yeah, I
fairness.
think, and I've got to be honest, right? Growing up, quite loved Godzilla. There was a Godzilla cartoon. Don't know if you've ever seen that. That was around as well. You had
Mm.
Godzuki in there as well. Um, but I just don't. I haven't enjoyed any of the more recent kind of Godzilla films. They just haven't hit it for me. If it's on streaming and it's new content when nothing else is out, yeah, I'd probably watch it. I prefer Godzilla, like the old Japanese, where it's clearly a guy in a suit walking around this little model, uh, little model town where he's just kicking over bits of Lego, and then he finds an equally sized monster, and it, like you say, it's just two guys fighting away in suits. Those are my favorite Godzillas. So I don't think we'll see any of those back. But yeah, if this is on streaming, I will probably watch it. And I imagine there's probably, if you look at that Venn diagram, there's probably a lot of people sat with me who, if it's there on streaming and they can watch it, will probably just give it a chance.
Yeah, because the Godzilla sequel, King of Monsters, which isn't a great film, but I still love it. That didn't do too well financially, and there was talks that Godzilla Kong wouldn't happen because obviously that film, I think, lost the money or only made the small amount of profit. So it was like, well, should we make this? But they were doing it. They were pretty much doing it all back to back, so they had to make it. So I think this cinematic universe on monsters was probably nearing its end because once you have it's hard to get people back on board once you have a sort of a financial failure. So, but this might bleed new life into it, but like I said earlier, it's hard to gauge. So I think this is something that will die. These films will now die out. This cinematic universe they've created, because I think they'll go, well, the only solid figures we have is the sequel Godzilla film that didn't do very well. So how do we know if the people signing up to HBO Max are solidly going to be Godzilla and King Kong fans and come to the next film?
Yeah.
But I think all these films have been pretty good, and I've enjoyed every single one. So, but I think this is the last time we'll see these characters for the time being.
I think so. And I just think, if you think back to the original, the King Kong, and if you were seeing that on the cinema, you wouldn't have seen anything like it, and the idea you've got this massive gorilla, climbing the Empire State Building, and, it's got a very sad ending, obviously. You could see why that would absolutely resonate with people and they'd be going nuts for King Kong. These days, I just don't know how these monster movies fit with everything. And I'm just looking now, it's got, says between 160 and 200 million budget. I'm making a prediction now. There's no way it's going to make anything like that back. I just don't. I'm glad it's out there for people like you who enjoy it. I just don't think there's enough people who are still into that
No, I agree. Yeah,
monster mash.
I think for these films to do well, they have to be very, very good. Like they have to be very good films to capture people's attention. There's not enough built-in fan base for it to go. Like if you release a Batman film, no matter the quality, it will make $600 million worldwide, like minimum, even if it's bad. But if this is bad, people will just go, well, I'm not going to go see it. You've got to capture people's interest. So, yeah, I mean that's a shame. But so the next film I've put on here is James Bond: No Time to Die. That's now been that was going to be released in April 22. Well, technically it was going to be released in November 2019. Then Danny Boyle left the project. So then it was April 2020. Obviously, COVID happened. Now it's October 2021. They're saying because it's being delayed so much, and also it's burning a hole in these people's pockets, and they did full marketing for it. The amount it has to make is like skyrocketing. So before, to break even, it had to make like about $500 million. Apparently, that's like rocketing up now to about 650 because they got to do all the marketing again if they put it on cinema.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. You got to send Daniel Craig out to do all his interviews, host Saturday Night Live. Yeah. He has to redo all that. So it's going to be costly.
The thing is, it's James Bond, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't understand why you would have to promote it quite that much. That, all right, it's not the size of Batman, but like you said with Batman, you release that movie, it doesn't matter. You don't even... 89 Batman for Tim Burton, they hardly did anything. All they did was almost this like viral marketing. They just kept showing the sign and everyone was going nuts for it. It's like, what's this going to be? I don't think you have to spend that much more on the marketing, but I think they are in a precarious place. And again, what I was saying about studio executives and not being around forever, it wouldn't surprise me if they just kind of run the ball into the corner until they can make their next move and let the next guy deal with it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. It's the future one's problem, definitely. I mean, it's also risky because it's like, well, do we throw this out there? Say, well, we already did the marketing. People are talking about James Bond: No Time to Die. Like people want this film. Like people are discussing it. I'm talking to my friends about it who aren't huge film fans, but they're all going, yeah, I really want to see this. Do they risk it? Say, well, there's that built-in knowledge. Let's throw it out there, or do we play it safe, redo the marketing, and hopefully break even? So I don't want this to go streaming. I saw some people on Twitter the other day saying, yeah, throw it on streaming. People people want content, people want to watch it, but it's James Bond. It's a cinema experience. I go, my mum, my dad, and people. It's a big thing for us
Hmm.
when a James Bond film goes out. We all go to the cinema together. We don't do that for any other film,
Mm.
but that one we go out for it. So, and I think there's a lot of people who do that.
See, I probably don't have the same emotional connection because growing up as a
Mm.
kid, most of the James Bond I watched were reruns on the TV. A bit of Sean Connery, a bit of Roger Moore, and they'd be played on
Yeah.
a Sunday afternoon or something, and Moonraker's on. So most of the James Bond stuff that I'd seen, certainly growing up, was on the TV. So it wouldn't feel that alien to me. But that said, when you go to watch, I watched Casino Royale at the cinema, and when the music kicks in, it's just brilliant, isn't it? You can't beat that cinema music. I don't care how good your surround sound is at home. I do think you get extra from a Bond movie going to the cinema, but if it was a choice between waiting for ages, like you say, the problem is if you spend more on marketing, it's still a gamble. You're still burning more cash.
Mm.
I'd be okay with seeing that one on streaming now.
Oh wow! Yeah, well, fair enough. It's always good to have a difference of opinion. You truly can replace Luke,
Yeah.
because we've never agreed on
I haven't told
anything.
you to fuck off yet, so.
Yeah. Well, there was apparently they did ship this around streaming. They shipped it around a few companies, but they wanted the rumored figure is $600 million,
Yeah, I heard
because then
that.
they broke even. So it's and Netflix can't do that. It's just too risky.
Yeah.
Um,
And they're
so
not in
yeah,
a
I mean,
they're not in a
shame.
great bargaining position, are they, as well? When they've got all
No,
these other
exactly.
movies and, straight to streaming content, to spend something like that on one film,
Yeah,
I don't think they'd have to make that back in additional subscribers, wouldn't they? And I just don't think they'd do it.
exactly. Okay, so last film. I think this would be quite a brief one. I only put it in here as I remember, because I forgot to mention. I kind of made it a rule that these films have to be ready. They have to be ready to go.
Yeah.
They're a finished product. They're just sitting there. And then I realized that this film is actually finished, and it's Avatar 2. That's done. I didn't realize that for me that was always just, they said they're making it, like they've been saying they've been making it for about 10 years, but no, it's finished.
Mm.
Like it got finished in September. It's going to be released December 2022, and I've put should have been released December 2014. That was the first release
Wow.
date it got, which was 8 years ago. So yeah, well, 8 years before it gets released. So I mean, if things continue the way they are, would you happily watch Avatar 2 on streaming?
I'm not sure what the conditions would be. I watch quite a lot of movies and TV shows and stuff. I think this is fairly low down on my list. When the first one came out on the cinema, it looked amazing and it was kind of
Yeah.
revolutionary and everyone was all excited about it and it made all of this money. But the story was ultimately a bit thin and a bit shit. So
Mm.
I've watched it once and it was that time at the cinema and I went, wow, that was impressive. Think about think about the Phantom Menace, right? Pretty terrible prequel. I think most of us can agree. Um,
Mm.
or most of the oldies, the original trilogy lot. But you can't deny that what that prequel trilogy did was drive special effects forward. So,
Yeah.
and with all the spin-off companies and whatever that Lucas did, it wasn't just, this one company. So I think Avatar did that as well. It kind of raised the bar. This is how you would do a proper 3D movie. And, you have all of the influences. So people who've worked on that, they go off and work on other movies as well. So even by osmosis, if there's not some technological advance, people have got that experience and take it away. I'm just not interested in seeing that story continued.
Mm.
And I think, well,
It's bizarre because, yeah, the Avatar film, the first one, it hasn't aged well.
Right. In the way it looks, or do you mean the story?
No, as in like obviously it still looks great. I haven't watched it
Hmm.
recently, but it's like you say, the story's not great. People pick holes in Avatar now. People are like, yeah, actually, that's not such a great film, actually, and no one's really crying out for that story to be
Hmm.
continued. It's not like that film came out and everyone went, wow, it's incredible, but then everyone kind of sat down, thought about it, and then realized to actually look past that and go, actually, the story backing it up
Mm,
is not very good.
yeah.
So it's very interesting. Does Avatar 2 do well at the cinema despite people? I would say the general opinion of Avatar now is it's not very good. Does that film do well? Because I say no,
Mm.
but then I remember James Cameron is making it, who only ever makes hits. So that guy knows cinema probably more than you and me.
Oh, without a doubt,
Yeah,
obviously, but and he's a perfectionist as well. It's a
yeah,
great documentary. I love watching Aliens, the documentary, and I can imagine he's a tough guy to work for. And he hires and
yeah,
fires quite a lot. If you're not up to scratch, you're gone. So I think it will look great. I think for me it'd be one of those where if I get a word of mouth, if someone says, "Oh, I tell you what, you've got to see it on the big screen. It looks amazing, and it's taken another leap forward in special effects," then I'd be like, "All right, okay, then I'll go and
mm,
watch it." So it's one of those. I think if there is a chance that I'm going to watch this, it would probably be on the cinema. I guess there's another element to this as well. The reason the first Avatar made so much money is you had to watch it in 3D, which you get stung extra for, don't you? So
yeah.
to actually go and watch it and pay that surcharge on watching it in 3D, yeah, it's quite a high bar. So it'd only be if I heard from other people how great it was.
Yeah. Well, apparently it looks. Apparently they've done a load of. It's underwater stuff. It's loads of new technology they're using. It's taken 3 years to film, and I think they've also done Avatar 3 with it as well. I don't doubt it will look incredible, and I reckon that's what will get people in. So yeah, I mean, I would want to see this on the cinema. I'm not overly interested. Not as I say, I'll probably go. People say it's good. Uh, to put it on streaming would be a disservice to I think
Yeah,
the work that's gone into it and the champion of like big special effects.
yeah.
So yeah, I just found it so interesting that actually these film that film is done. That is done and dusted. So I hopefully touch wood 2020 by the end of 2022 some normality would have been restored, but
Yeah.
who knows. Who knows? Okay, so well, I think that's all the films I have. We're going to move on to our last little segment, just things we've been watching or reading, or even video games we've been playing this week. So, why don't you start us off, Dave? Is there anything you've watched this week or that you
Oh
recommend?
my word, what have I been watching this week? So obviously One Division, we mentioned, but
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
skip on past that. I actually watched one that we're going to review for the TV and movies, which was based on an old David Wagner book. So David Wagner, synonymous with Judge Dredd. It's called History of Violence. It's about this guy who's kind of in a small town, but it turns out he's actually from 20 years previous, he was kind of a bit of a ruthless gangster, and his whole life's kind of caught up with him and his kids and everything.
Mm,
Really quite interesting. It's got Viggo Mortensen in it. So that, yeah, I could recommend that. What else? I mean, we watched They Live. Oh my God. For the VHS Strikes Back, we watched King of the Kickboxers, which is like a B movie kung fu classic,
right.
and with
Yeah.
Lauren Avedon and Billy Blanks. Do you remember Billy Blanks? He did
Yes.
the old
Yes. Yes.
Tybo and stuff like that. So watch that.
Yeah.
Pretty awful. In terms of reading, I started Batman Hush, and then also started
Oh,
All
okay.
Star
Yeah.
Superman as well.
Oh, that's a fantastic comic. Also, that's one of my all time
Yeah,
favorites.
so I
All,
started it.
all
I mean, I
Star
was reading it
Superman.
digitally, and then it was like, oh, this is a long one. This one, so
Oh yes, it is.
yeah,
Yeah,
I should
yeah. It's
actually
good to
just
get all that.
finish one. Um, and then I think
Yeah.
before the end of the weekend, I want to tackle. I've got Ed Brubaker's Pulp. I was going to review that on Tony's show. It looks like a little old Western pulp story. So, and
Mm.
Tony's fed back that it says it's quite good. So, quite looking forward to that one as well. What about
Oh, good.
yourself?
I've read something I've read this week was Daredevil Volume 2. It's written by Chip Zdarsky. I read the first volume. Uh, I think the run started in about 2019. So I've said to myself, I'm actually going to try and read more of a full run
Mm-hmm.
of a comic, because usually I just buy separate stories. I just find stories that are recommended and go from there, instead of sort of investing in full runs. So. Uh, I've been reading that. That's very good. It's very good. The Daredevil story. It's pretty much what has come before in sort of the shape of the Netflix TV show.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much dealing with Daredevil's faith and whether actually he likes violence. It's not a case of now he's doing it to help the city. It's actually he enjoys violence. He
Mm.
enjoys that release, and he keeps coming to also repent his sins, and the priest and nun attend them. Well, actually, you're not actually repenting. You're enjoying this. You need to figure it out, because you are sinning this entire time. And he goes into retirement when he accidentally kills a man. Well, currently it's 100% going to be retcon that he hasn't killed
Mm-hmm.
him, but that's kind of where the story's going. And there's Wilson Fisk is the mayor, which is I always find quite interesting when he rises to power. I've always said, Lex Luthor in Batman vs Superman should have been what like Wilson Fisk is.
Yeah, yeah.
He should be that smart. So yeah, I've been reading that, and I've also been reading the Batman run that was written by Scott
Mm-hmm.
Snyder. I believe Max, he also he recommended those volumes. I've just started volume 5. I've got one more, and I think I've pretty much read all the stuff on that. I mean, that's been really good. And what I've found with each volume, they're all kind of separate stories. They're not you don't have to read each one to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
There's one solely focused on the Joker. There's one on the Court of Owls, and yeah, that's been a really good read thus far. And I'm about to start, after it was recommended last week by yourself, House of M. I found it on digital download, so I've got that all downloaded, and I think I'll probably start that tonight. So I'm
Oh,
actually quite
nice.
looking forward to that. Yeah, but that's kind of me. And I've also been playing Star Wars Fallen
Mm-hmm.
Order, which was the single player game that got released about a year and a half ago. I don't mind it, but the problem is I don't like puzzles in games. I get really frustrated and really angry because I can never work them out, and I ultimately then just call up the walkthrough. And there's too many puzzles in it, and I'm always saying I just want to be a Jedi and throw the lightsaber about. That's all I'm interested in, not Tomb Raider.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's where it's let itself down. But other than that, it's a good game, and I mostly got it just because I love Star Wars and I want to know everything going on in Star Wars. I want to know what the actual plots are going on in expanded universe. So yeah, that's me. That's what I've been sort of watching and reading this
So
week.
that's
So
cool. I think, Daredevil is an interesting one because I went for years. I love Daredevil. I mean, pretty much if you start with, apart from obviously the Frank Miller stuff, which is iconic, where Elektra gets kind
yeah.
of introduced and then killed off and what have you. But I think late 90s is when Kevin Smith did Guardian Devil. And then,
Hmm.
there was a time Brian Michael Bendis was writing it. I know he's been a bit patchy of late on his DC stuff, but his run on Daredevil was great. He had Ed Brubaker as well. It was just so consistent. But then it built up to this event called Shadowland, where he was basically possessed and he got like super strength and stuff, and it all just got a bit silly. And then I just kind of dropped off it. And then so since then, I think Mark Waid wrote after that. So I need to go back now and pick up Daredevil. But definitely, if you enjoy Daredevil, I mean, Born Again for me is just an amazing run. So I can
Yeah,
highly
I love
recommend that one.
Born Again.
Um,
Yeah, I read that. probably about 6 months ago now, and that's
Okay.
one of my favorite all-time comics. Born Again, that is a fantastic comic.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the show. So thank you, Dave. Thank you for stepping in for Luke during his absence. You can follow us at what's the topic _pod on Twitter, me at Jasper Reviews, and where can people follow you, Dave?
Yeah, so you can get me, mostly you can get me on this network, so Comics in Motion. You can get us on Twitter at Comics in Motion P. You can also get me on the VHS Strikes Back as well, which is on all your podcast catchers, and also just VHS Strikes Back on Twitter. And then, if you want a bit of reality TV indulgence, which is a bit crazy, very, very fake and a bit of nonsense, almost to wrestling standards, but you can get me on Chris and Dave's reality cast. So we're currently going through The American Bachelor, and it is entertaining, but just in a completely different way.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, yeah. All right. Thank you for being on the show, and see everyone in the next week's episode.
Thank you very much. Bye now.